old girl who wrote the Virginia Housewife's Cookbook was very fond of European cuisine. And if she could afford to write a book, you knew she was very wealthy to start with, right? In those times, that would certainly be the case. So she must have run a wild house in Virginia. Fish is a little purple, isn't it? I think it'll look good on a plate, though. Let's thicken that now with a roux. Here's my whip. Bring your heat up. And when you're ready to thicken something with a roux, take the pan off. Ouch. Sorry, I couldn't pick that up. It's too hot. Take it off the burner. Then stir in some of the roux. That should do, a tablespoon or so. You see, that's about a tablespoon and a half. Stir it off the burner so that you're not going to get lumps. If you cook flour and butter together first, now I'll put it back on the burner, you see. That way we won't have any lumps at all. Simmer this for just a moment. If you cook flour and butter together, you coat each little grain of flour with a bit of butter so that they can't possibly stick together. On the other hand, if you use flour and water, you've made glue to start with, and it'll just simply glue your food together. Okay, that's finished. Let's put it in a platter. It's going to look a little strange to you because it's purple as can be, but this was a common dish of the time, and I think you and I should try them. You should try them indeed. Purple fish? Why, what are your kids going to say? Well, they'll just have to love it. That's what. They'll just have to love it. You see how these pieces are still holding together firmly and nicely? Because I didn't want to overcook the fish. I can't stand cooked fish. I don't know why people cook fish. Just get it good and hot and serve it, for heaven's sakes. Don't fool around with it. Alrighty, now a pot holder, and I can pick up that pot here. It's really heavy. This is that heavy Le Creuset Frenchware. You know, it works very well, though. I love it. My wife doesn't care for it because she says it's too heavy for her hand, but then she'll never burn anything in it. You can't burn anything in this pot. They just hold so well. So learn how to use them. There you are. There's a matalote. And I would serve this with a green salad and a lovely wine. You can say, well, it can't be a red wine because after all, it's fish. Why can't it be a red wine? This is how it was cooked. If it's cooked with a red wine, serve it with a red wine. Isn't that an interesting color? It's just marvelous. Okay, I have another one for you. See what else is cooking here. Let's check our celery first, huh? No, not quite tender yet. Oh, this smells awfully good, though. Remember, we have mace in this one, mace and nutmeg in the simmering celery. Almost finished. Let me show you one more. This one is a riot. It again came from the Virginia Housewife Cookbook of 1824, and it's called chicken pudding. Got that? Chicken pudding. And it's simply gorgeous. Let me find a bowl here. I have simmered on the stove a disjointed chicken. That is to say, I cut the chicken up. Here he is. And I need to find my draining spoon. There we go. I'll take the chicken out and put him in a baking pan, a baking dish of some sort. I have a little glass Pyrex one here from France. Please pick a pan that will just keep your chicken pieces close together. I have everything in here but the back, the wings, and the legs and all. And what I've done is to simmer these according to her recipe. She wants me to simmer them in a bit of water, salt and pepper, parsley, and some thyme. Isn't it interesting that thyme was so common too? There we are. Now we're going to make a pudding to go over that. And this pudding recipe will surprise you. It's very interesting. Here we go. Okay, I want 3 eggs. Now, she gave me her recipe was this one. She said, make a pudding then of eggs, milk, butter, melted butter, pepper, salt, and flour, add it over, put it on the chicken and bake it. All right, so I've had to fool around with this. But I've come up with the following variation on that most interesting recipe. 3 eggs. All righty? 1, 2, and a third one. Mix up your eggs, and then we're going to blend it with half a cup of flour. But remember that you're going to have trouble unless you mix up your eggs first. I'm looking for my whipper here. There we go. Milk will not blend with eggs unless you whip them first. All right, now then we need half a cup of milk. That's about half a cup. And we need about a cup of flour. And I've got some butter on here to melt. I want about 3 tablespoons of butter that's been melted. So we'll do that too. And this is a very interesting dish. I think you'll enjoy it. 3 tablespoons of butter and a cup of flour. blend this in about half a cup at a time so that you don't have lumps. That's easy that way. If you don't have a good whip at home like this, well, pick one up, will you? It's very easy to work with, and I think they're very necessary. There we go. You can find them in any good gourmet shop. And another cup of flour. That should do us. There we are. Isn't this strange? You know, what we're making is very much like an English Yorkshire pudding, isn't it? Same basic recipe. Okay. There we are. Now, while my butter melts, come on, butter, melt. While my butter melts, let's thicken the celery sauce. I'm going back now to the celery dish that we prepared earlier. Let's thicken that with a roux. And in this case, I'm just going to use a fork because my whipper is dirty, and I really don't need to worry about it. So let's get it off the heat now. Remember, that's a basic rule. When you thicken anything with a roux, get it off the heat. Okay, and we'll just stir this right into it. You see? I just have a couple of tablespoons here, or a tablespoon or so of roux. You just stir it right into the celery. Off the heat. Oops, that's plenty. I put in too much roux. Put in less than that. Put in about a tablespoon. There, we don't want it too thick. And if it is too thick for you, then simply add a bit of white wine. There it is. Here's a celery sauce. There we go. It's all done. Not complicated, is it, huh? But this is very, very fine cooking. You know, the idea that Americans imported so much of the food knowledge from England may sound to you like a bad thing now, because I'm not particularly fond of what's going on in England in terms of food. But it wasn't so bad at the time. It was very good cuisine. As a matter of fact, French chefs very often went to England to learn to cook. Can you imagine such a thing? Because the English had so many grand things to eat. They had such great food supplies. Marvelous things, all kinds of grand stock and all. Now, she says boil it up and throw it in a dish, or pour it in a dish. So we'll boil it up. We've done that. And let's put it in the dish now. This is a very, very nice sauce. It's very fresh tasting. Simply celery. And you spoon this over any kind of fish or fowl. There it is. Let me put this over here for you. We're getting some interesting colors, aren't we? Especially that purple fish. I love that one. That's too much. Of course you can try it with white wine. I heard that. Of course you can put white wine in it. It wouldn't look quite so strange to you. Ouch. I want to put some melted butter now. We're going back to our baked chicken pudding. I want to put some melted butter into our batter of eggs. 3 eggs, half a cup of milk, 3 tablespoons of melted butter. We're going to put in a little bit of salt and pepper and some flour. We haven't added the salt and pepper yet, have we? Let's do that. And we'll stir in, just put in a pinch of pepper. You don't need much. You don't want to go overboard on this. And just a pinch of salt. Remember again, be careful with this. You're eating too much salt. I heard that too. You say, well, you don't know what I eat. Well, I do know what you eat. You consume a great deal of salt because most of us eat foods that we pick up that have been processed, you see, at restaurants, or foods that have been processed for home use, instant foods and so on. They're all loaded with salt. Of course, in the colonies, you ate a lot of salt and died very early, a lot of salt and a lot of fat. And that's why you didn't live very long. But we don't have to do that. Those things were used for preservatives in the old days. You and I can preserve ourselves with joy and a good hug. A little glass of wine, perhaps, but we don't need all that salt and fat. Now, the chicken then has been cooked with parsley and thyme in salted water till it's tender, just about 45 minutes. And then I'm going to pour the batter that I've just given you. Just stir it in the butter. You see, I'm going to pour the batter over the top of this. And we're going to bake this in about a 400 to 425 degree oven until done. And that means that it's puffy and brown. That should take you about, I would check it after 30 minutes. There we are. I would check this after 30 minutes and see what happens to it. Let me take one out of the oven here. Of course I have one baked for you. Think I'd leave you hanging after that description, huh? There we are. There we are. Ouch, 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 ouch. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at it. It's the most interesting thing. I can't imagine, you know, if someone had told me about a chicken pudding, I couldn't imagine what it was going to be, and so I couldn't wait to try it. But it was very common in Virginia at the time. Obviously, they have robbed the English dish called Yorkshire pudding, you see, and mixed that up with the chicken. and you have a very lovely dish. So we now have some celery, sauce, fish, pickled oysters, and a beautiful chicken dish, all from the colonies. Now, when you think about what went on in the colonies, I want to taste all these things, by the way. When you think what went on in the colonies, you can begin to wonder about our own future. And I think we'd better talk right now, honestly, with one another, about what's going to happen in America. If we contend in our time that time that we gain by buying instant foods is more important than time we spend cooking with our children, or cooking with one another, cooking with people we love, I think our culture is in for disastrous ruin. I really believe that time spent cooking with one another is time that's going to hold the family together, hold the culture together, so that we have great memories. When we have things to remember as a child, you see. As an adult, you will be a much nicer person, a much more sensitive person. Eating TV dinners isn't going to help, or sucking on frozen popsicles isn't going to help, you see. We want to enjoy ourselves, so every once in a while, whip out a dinner that has some history behind it, such as this kind of thing. And when you serve your children, say, you know, your great-great-grandmother such and such used to eat this sort of thing. And of course, the old girl did. So that when you sit down at the table, you can eat history along with your food. That's very important. History along with your food. Now, let's dish this up. The matalote is to be served over toasted bread, fried bread that you've cooked in... Gee, I should break that up. It's been fried in butter. I should break that up before I put it on the plate, shouldn't I? I'm getting crumbs all over. These plates are too gorgeous for that. These plates are from an outfit in Los Angeles called the Lone Oak Plate Company, and I think they're just beautiful. Now, let me put some fish on this. Ouch. It's a little warm, but I'm going to make it here. I want to try it and see what we come up with, huh? You see the sauce will just seep right down into the bread. You have a most interesting dish. There we are. And we could try a chunk of chicken too. But I want to try the fish and see what happens. This is just the color. Let's see what it does, huh? Let's see what it does. There we are. The sauce does do something to the tummy. Isn't it amazing how colors get in the way of things? But it has a heavenly flavor. Just an absolutely heavenly flavor. So, what we're doing this morning is talking about history, but I want us to eat it. I want you to celebrate with your family and dredge up marvelous dishes, such as the few that we made for you today, all from ancient times in our culture. A beautiful celery sauce to go over seafood or poultry. Then we have the matalote, which is a fish in wine sauce, and the pickled oysters going back to jolly old England times. And finally, fish pudding from the Virginia Housewife, 1824. Cook. This is a great culture, and we should be enjoying ourselves absolutely, because we are very interesting people. This is the Frugal Gourmet. Until we're together again, I bid you peace. Bye-bye.